Let's move on to talking a little bit more about the products you guys have come out with. We've talked mainly about I think your like legacy keyboard at this point. You've come out with three or four new ones. So could you tell us about like the Moonlander and the Voyager keyboards and how they might differ from the Ergodox EZ and the more older models?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I just want to gently push back on that. The Ergodox EZ is not legacy. We actually uh, just updated it with the same processor, the same internal processor, and all capabilities that are used on our latest keyboards, the Moonlander and the Voyager. So yeah, it's not a legacy product. It's fully supported. We spent an unreasonable amount of money, time, and effort doing it. It's really it. We had to recertify the product on on an FCC level and on a technical level. It's an all new product. It's like an entirely new keyboard, but it's got the same shell and the same everything, and we call it the same name just because I don't love the hype. Like I don't love just we could have hyped it, but I chose not to. But really, it's an all new Ergodox EZ, and it's very much, very much maintained, and and we invest in it. Now, the Moonlander and the Voyager. The Moonlander came about when Dima said, "You know what? I think like we've been running with the Ergodox Z at that point for a few years, and we knew the product quite well, and various pros and cons, and we had ideas. And then Dima said, "You know what? I think I can make a keyboard that uses the same key switches, the MX style key switches, but is super super thin." And also, he said, "I have an idea about the leg that I want to try." And thus the Moonlander was born. If you have a Moonlander, you flip it, you'll see his name is on the back. I wanted to include his name as the designer uh, on the back because his work, obviously, he does all of the mechanical design for everything, but for the Moonlander specifically, it was very foundational. So what is unique about the Moonlander is one at the time before people started using low profile switches, which we will get to, but for an MX keyboard, it's extremely slim. It's very, very thin. The other thing, which is actually patented, is that the thumb cluster tilts and can be used as one of the legs of the board, which has pros and cons. This is kind of why I tend to recommend the Moonlander to people with bigger hands. I have pretty small hands myself, so I was using the Moonlander for many years, but when I do use it, I use it flat as my daily driver. I don't actually tent it because tenting it moves the thumb cluster, and then it wants your thumb to be a little bit farther away. So if you're like 6 foot or something, 5'10" or whatever, um, that's fine. But if you're like me, I'm like 5'7", that's too much of a stretch, so I like to use it flat. That said, that was a groundbreaking thing, and again, it's patented. The US, the patent office agrees um, that you can shift the shape of the keyboard like that and use the thumb cluster as a tenting device. So that's the
Yeah, I want to hear about the Voyager. I'm very into low profile like keys these days, so the Voyager is pretty exciting.
yeah. So the Voyager again came from Florian in this case. He hit me up one day and said, "You know what? What if there was a keyboard? What if we made a keyboard that's really small and you can actually take like a MacBook, you can take a laptop and just tent the keyboards against the size of the laptop so that, half of the keyboard is on the desk and like it's kind of like a roof, where it sits at an angle against the side of the laptop." And he even had a name. He said, "Oh, let's call it the Voyager." I'm like, "Oh, that's a perfect name." Of course, he had the name when he came up with it, and and then at that time, Kailh had just started making the Choc switches, or I don't know if just there were not many keyboards using Kailh Choc at that point, um, and no split keyboards at all. And we said, okay, we want something that's even more portable than the Moonlander. The Moonlander already comes with a carrying case. We created the Moonlander as a portable keyboard, but we felt we could do even more. So let's make it even smaller and let's make it low profile. And that's how that started. And that's a keyboard that, in my opinion, works really well for people with smaller hands. That's the one I use. I've been using it um, ever since it was a circuit board. the very first prototypes obviously were just circuit boards with switches. There was no housing yet. So I took the thing, I plugged it in, I just put the circuit board on my desk and, a little rubber feet, and I went to town, and I would not use anything else. Like, it was so great. And I guess a part of that is also my own contribution to the Voyager. This is the first keyboard where the geometry comes entirely from me. Like, I kind of decided and iterated on where exactly would the keys go, how many keys would we have, how far apart would they be, what would be the column stagger. That's what you call it when certain columns are positioned higher than others. By how much exactly? Like, those are various design decisions. So there, that was my part there. And yeah, there's a bunch of new stuff with the Voyager. Like, it's got a metal back, which means it's magnetic, which opens up a whole bunch of accessories with it. Yeah, that's the Voyager, and more stuff is coming for the Voyager, but I got to be quiet about that for now. But it's definitely it's an evolving keyboard, we can say.
Yeah, I saw the tripod advertised on the accessories, and I was like, or the tripod mount. This is like, you can like mount the keyboard to like a tripod, or I guess like probably more realistically like to your chair, or like some, something on your desk,
like a C-clamp. People often just buy third-party C-clamps. And what's the Moonlander also has a tripod kit, which we actually redid recently and didn't tell anyone. Like, again, like, we're gonna be a little bit quiet, but it has a, I guess this is the announcement. The Moonlander has an entirely redesigned tripod kit, which we put months of work into, and it's out. But the tripod kit for the Voyager is magnetic, which is really fun because when you want to take it, you just pull it out, and you don't have to undo any screws.
So how did you go about like iterating on the design of the Voyager? Like, it costs a lot to probably create those prototypes. So like, were you just like designing it in CAD and hoping, or were you getting like samples from the factory?
No, that's a really great question. So again, I keep talking about the people I love. So here I'm going to talk about this YouTuber. His name is Ben Valak. He's a friend, and he talks a lot about keyboards and all that. And one thing I picked up on a video of his, he created his own layout for his own keyboard, and he did that by printing out squares the size of keys on just a regular sheet of paper, not 3D printed, just print out a paper and put your fingers on it. And then he actually used paint, like finger paints, to put on his fingers and kind of estimate range of motion by spreading the paint around and all that. And I was like, oh, that's genius. So I did that. The very beginning of the Voyager's geometry was a 2-dimensional vector file that I measured out the size of a key that I wanted. I had a fairly clear idea about how many keys I wanted, and then I started laying them out. Okay, like, for example, a very important subjective decision is the angle of the thumb cluster. So there are, let's see if I can bring this up to the camera here. Hang on. So these are aftermarket keycaps. I can talk about them. But anyways, this thumb cluster, right? This is just how many keys should it have? And also, like, should it be like here? Should it be much closer? Should these be like more vertical? These are all really subjective decisions. And much of the early iteration was done on sheets of paper. I put my own hands on the sheets of paper, and then I asked other people to put their hands on the sheets of paper, and asked other people to do the paint thing, and like, I shared it around. And then I had a clear idea for the first version I wanted. And then Thibaut made a circuit board for me, a working PCB. It's obviously not cheap, but really, when you're talking manufacturing, the big money comes when you talk about tooling for injection molding. Before the plastic, once you're just doing PCBs, that's okay. That's not super terrible. It's not cost prohibitive at all. So they made me a circuit board, and they sent it over, and I tried it. And it was missing some keys. It didn't have a number row, and I couldn't work without a number row. I tried it for 10 minutes, and I was so frustrated. How did I not think that, having a number row is essential for me? Let's revise. I added a number row, kind of finagled the positioning. And then we went back and forth. I don't know, I think there must have been 6 or 7 of these circuit board revisions, just adjusting the column stagger, for example, because yeah, I can see it on the paper, but what should really be that distance? What should really be that angle? I can only tell by typing and typing and typing and typing on a physical keyboard. So that was how the prototyping worked until finally I hit on a geometry that I was really happy with, and I'm still very happy with more than a year after the keyboard, hit the market.